In our last lecture, we learned how to use the melt function to transform our data from wide form to long form. Because as we learned, R can really only properly graph data that's in long form. So if we have a data frame that isn't automatically in long form, we need to be able to transform it into that from wide form. And just as a reminder of what we did, we took a wide form data frame, as we see on the left here, and using the melt function, we turned it into long form, which is what we see on the right, where instead of 3 columns with the titles and numbers within them, we have a column with the names of the columns themselves and a column for the numbers within those. Now, what I'm going to do here is go ahead and graph our new data so that we can see why it was so important for us to transform the data. I'm going to use ggplot. So these are the 3 libraries you'll need to call up. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this. I'm going to use ggplot. I'm going to insert my data frame here, which is the new melted data frame. I'm going to say I want on the y-axis the new number of animals column. On the x-axis I want city zoos. And here you see I've got fill equals animal. Now fill here refers to the inner color of the bar graph. So what this is going to do is there's going to be 1 bar for each zoo, but within each bar it's going to be sectioned off in different colors for each type of animal. And you'll see that in a second. But I'm going to go over the rest of this code real fast. I'm going to add on geom_bar because I want a bar plot. And if you recall, I'm going to use stat equals identity because I want the bars to represent the number in the column instead of how many of those numbers are in the column. Basically, I want it to be a bar graph, not a histogram. I'm going to add a title, a y-axis label, an x-axis label. And because I've actually already made this graph before, I know that I want to clean up the y-axis a little bit. I actually want the y-axis to start at 0 and go to 10 by increments of 2. So when I run this, I get a very pretty graph here where each bar represents one of the zoos and each color represents a different type of animal. But what I actually want isn't for each animal to be in the same bar. I want each of these zoos to have 3 individual bars. So that's what I've done here, and I've actually changed the colors as well. Say I don't really like the automatic colors that R is assigned. I don't like this kind of pink color, green, blue. What if I want different colors? So I've got the same data frame, melted zoo animals, and the same aesthetics with number of animals at my y, x equals city zoos, fill equals animal. But within my geom_bar function here, I'd still have stat equals identity, but then I have a comma and then position equals position dodge. And you might see this in other graphs too. It's when you have data that's overlapping each other. So for example, in a scatter plot, you can also use this to make sure that if dots are overlapping, they skew from each other a little bit. And what it's going to do in a bar graph is it's going to make each of these 3 color sections a different bar. And then I've also added the same title, y-axis label, x-axis label, same y scale. But then I've also done one other thing, and I've added scale fill manual. So it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's putting in a manual fill color for each of those bars. And I'm going to make the values, since I have 3 colors here, it's going to apply the first value I insert here to my first color, second to the second one, third to the third, etc. And I've chosen 3 colors that I like a little better. And these are hex codes, as I explained in my earlier video. So I'm going to run this, and what it's going to do is now, instead of having 1 bar for each zoo, I have 3 bars, 1 for each animal. Let me make this a little bigger for you. And instead of the automatic R colors, it's changed the colors to things that I liked a little better, maybe yellow for lions and orange for tigers and stuff like that. And lastly, I'm going to export this and save it as an image. I can choose whatever type of image I want. I'll save it as a JPEG. Choose where I want to save it on my computer by clicking directory. I'm going to change the title to Animals in US Zoos. And then I can change however big I want this to be. So maybe I want it to be 900 by 600. I can update this and that will make it a little bigger. And if I save it, it'll save it onto my computer. And now I have this as a JPEG image, ready to use it in a report or put on a website or whatever I want to do with it. So in this video, we've graphed some data that we previously changed the format of from wide format to long form. And then we learned different ways of graphing bar graphs. We learned how to use position dodge to split up a bar into multiple bars, and finally exported our graph for use in other places.